The 10 lies that Africans are told about economics and development. Number 1. Political power is more important than economic power. Only in Africa, notably in Tanzania recently, do citizens fight a president who is building an economy just because he opposes small things like premarital sex among teenagers. The so-called human rights groups spend their time fighting for the right to engage in debauchery, when economic growth is what will lift the people out of poverty. So we have a preconceived notion that just because we have political power gained through independence, that is more important than economic power. Number 2, fighting corruption will end poverty. As Africans, we are often told that the reason that poverty rampages the continent is because of corruption. Now, it begs the question, if corruption is the problem, then why were Africans still very poor, in fact poorer under colonialism, when they believed that there was little corruption? In fact, right now, more Africans are doing better post-independence than during colonialism. So how can fighting corruption be the end-all be-all of ending poverty? Number 3, gender equality will bring development. There is no country in the history of the world that has become an economic superpower because of gender equality. Development comes from economic activity, which comes from manufacturing and industrialization and ownership of the economic engine. Africans are supposed to believe that everyone else achieved economic progress through ownership of resources and manufacturing raw materials. But somehow we are taught that some kind of social engineering through feminism is what will bring economic development, when there is no history in the history of the earth and the world where gender equality or feminism ever led to economic growth. The fourth lie we're told is that foreign investors bring prosperity. Every other continent, namely Asia, where countries like Malaysia, Singapore, and China and Japan believe in entrepreneurism and business, and in all the emerging markets, people believe in business. But in Africa, for example, in Zambia under President Chiluba, the prevailing thought was foreign investors were the answer to Zambia's economic woes. The IMF and the World Bank convinced Chiluba that selling one of the copper mines to foreign investors for 6 billion. The following year, those same foreign investors generated 30 billion and Zambia got nothing. The copper mines were the crown jewels now in the hands of foreign investors, and now the Zambians don't get any benefit from it, and yet we're supposed to believe that foreign investors are the ones that will bring us prosperity. The fifth lie we are told is that Rwanda is the model for economic development. Rwanda is often cited as the model for development if you talk to a lot of developmental economists. And, for example, Zimbabwe is listed as the worst economic disaster in Africa. But this is just conjecture and propaganda, because the economic metrics disprove this conventional wisdom. Economic activity is measured by GDP, or gross domestic product. Rwanda's GDP was only 8 billion in 2016, with a per capita GDP of $702, while Zimbabwe's GDP was 16 billion and 1008 per capita. So shouldn't, by these numbers, Zimbabwe be the model? Rwanda is only building their first car manufacturing or auto manufacturing plant in 2017, something that Zimbabwe started in the 1960s. So why is there this lie that Rwanda is the model for economic development in Africa? Number 6, we're told that capitalism is bad. China used to support socialist principles until 1980s, and it began to incorporate some of the capitalist principles and has not looked back. In just over 30 years, China has lifted more than 500 million people out of poverty, more than any other nation in the history of the world. There is nothing wrong with adopting some of the aspects of capitalism into our current economic models. Number 7, the seventh lie we're told is that jobs is the solution to everything. We are taught to focus on income and not on net worth. The cure for poverty is ownership of resources. And since most African economies are agro based, then ownership of land is paramount. Despite reports in the press, most Africans are better off today than under the so called corrupt regimes under colonialism. During colonialism, Africans had jobs, but none of us had wealth. Every African's net worth has increased exponentially in the post independence era. The eighth lie we're told is that hard work is the antidote to poverty. If all it took to become economically prosperous was hard work, then the Congolese working in the rubber plantations under Leopold would have been rich. Instead, the Congolese languish in poverty, and Belgium is wealthy on the backs of the Congolese. Solving poverty issues requires strategic thinking and innovation. And if hard work was the antidote to poverty, how come French citizens work on average just 30 hours a week and yet live better than most of their former French colonies that they eat off? The ninth lie that we are told is that education will end poverty. Now, many African countries have made milestones in literacy and education, Zimbabwe being one of the most educated citizenry on the continent. Yet the number of wealthy citizens is meager. We only have one billionaire and millions of graduates searching for jobs with little net worth and real estate or ownership. The 10th lie we're told is that the West and the East care about Africa. There is a misconception among Africans that Americans, Europeans, or Asians really want to see us successful. We as Africans sometimes take the American, European, and Asian philosophies as gospel and swallow everything that they tell us without thinking about it. Yet for all the years that we've listened to what the IMF and the World Bank have taught us, we are not any better off than we were. So these are the 10 lies that Africans are told about economics and economic development.